Hello, this is JJ Humphrey. I am with Bobby Cleveland. We're on Elephant in the Room today. We have a special guest, Justin Jackson. Justin's been on with us before, talking about several different subjects. He's working on the river. He's down there on Comiskey River. Today, we've had him on here talking about the river, talking about hydro energy plant, and that's what we're trying to do to stop that big plant. I think we've been successful on that. But you can't never let up. You can't never look sideways on all those. But today, what we're going to talk about is a huge victory that we just won. I mean, pretty excited about all of this. And that's the Richard Glossip case. So in case our listeners don't know, Richard Glossip is a person that was on death row for 27 years, Jackson. Is that right?
That's right.
27 years.
In the county for 2 years prior to that. So nearly 3 decades, 30 years. He's
30
been
years. Can you imagine that? How many times had he had his last meal, Jackson?
4.
Three last. Yeah.
3. Count this
I was
last one.
thinking he had 9 last meals and that he was on the gurney several times. But
He was, well, the third last meal was September 30th, 2015 at 3 p.m. He was scheduled for execution, and 3 o'clock came. And as you and I think Bobby knows too, that holding room that they have you, that last cell, is just a few steps into the execution chamber. And he had been watching through that little window, the guards go back and forth. And
that last
around
where he
4
was
o'clock.
at is like a big old suite, if I remember correctly.
A big suite.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good sized room.
Yeah, the one I saw wasn't. It was just a lot of cold concrete, and but they came to him and said, "Well, good news and bad news. The good news is we're not going to kill you today, but the bad news is we will kill you." And what saved him that day, they replaced one of the drugs with a food preservative, and the medical examiner said, "This isn't going to happen on my watch." And thankfully for that person, they halted the execution that day. They put a moratorium on our executions here in Oklahoma as a result. And now
Somebody going to eat him?
I'm sorry?
They put food preservative in there. Was someone going to eat him, serve him for dinner or something?
No. There was, I think it's potassium chloride, isn't it, Humphrey?
Right.
That they
Bob, they had a big argument for quite some time over one of the drugs didn't kill people as quickly as what they thought, and it caused a lot of problems. So they put, like you said, what Justin just said, they did a moratorium. So for people listening, that means just to put a pause on all the death penalties while they got the medication right. Didn't take them long to get the medication corrected, I don't think. But one of the problems was how they dispense that medication and trying to get somebody to give them a machine because a lot of places didn't want to be a part of the death penalty. So it took quite a bit longer to get the medication and the way to dispense the medication. So there was a moratorium for quite some time to try to get all that work. But now once they got it kind of kinks worked out, they went to hammering down and executing quite a few people.
Well, JJ, I want to say this, and then I'm going to sit back and listen to you guys talk because y'all have all the information. But I know for a fact you were getting a lot of flack from people at the Capitol, representatives, senators, is that you was protecting Glossip. He's innocent, and everybody said, "Oh, he's had 4 trials." JJ he just doesn't know what he's talking about. He just going to get in the middle of something. But you did know what you was talking about, and you won. So now I'm really interested in seeing these guys. And it was not one guy, not 2 guys. It was a lot of people was really bad mouthing you because of this. What it's going to cost the state, more money, and you're out of sight. You just go jump on anything. So I'm so thankful.
That is true, though, Bob. I will go jump on anything. That is absolutely true.
I'm talking about people that you. I didn't. I can't talk. Anyway, JJ, I'm proud that you fought for that guy, that Glossip guy, and had enough courage to stay in there, even though when there's bad mouthing you and criticizing you. And this came up, it brought up through the whole system of Oklahoma. So anyway, I'm going to stop. I want you guys to talk about it because I want to learn.
Well, Bob, I wouldn't even be in this fight if it wasn't for Justin Jackson. And so Justin called me. I was one of those people you're talking about when Justin called me and said, hey, I want you to take a look at this. And I was like, oh, that guy's done had 50,000 appeals. He's had all his chances he needs, Justin. I'm not interested. He just stayed on me. And then one day calls me up and says, I want you to call this attorney. And I was like, I don't want to call the attorney. No, I want you to call the attorney. And just because our friendship, I go, all right, I'll call him. And so I call the attorney and I tell the attorney, I said, hey, you better talk fast. You better put a smoking gun if you got it, because I ain't going to be on here listening too long because I just don't believe in all this. And we had, I don't know, a good 30-minute conversation. And I was like, hey, I don't see no smoking gun. He started talking about who prosecuted the guy, which was old Macy. And if you know about Macy, I mean, a lot of people in Oklahoma, unless you've been here for a while and paid attention to this stuff, just don't know how all the things, the hooks and the crooks and the pretty corrupt system of what Macy was to convict anybody. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, he had a reputation of convicting people, but he also had a reputation for doing it pretty underhandedly. And again, when you're supposed to be the top law enforcement officer, that's not the way you want to do it. But long story short, I decided to get involved, started looking at it. And man, once I started looking at it, it was just like, I just can't believe they could convict this guy. But I would say, Justin, and you jump in anytime you want, I'd say I was probably on the team for maybe a year, maybe even a little bit longer than a year, just kind of saying, well, I agree he needs a new trial, but my heart really wasn't in it until we found out that when we got the evidence that the district attorneys had told their investigator to go put 10 key pieces of evidence in a box, put the wrong case number on it, and set it on fire, is when I got fired up. And I would say at that point, I may got as fired up as anybody.
So how did you know that? I mean, how did you get that information?
Well, we had a group. Kevin McDougal, I would say as far as legislators, me and Kevin McDougal. Kevin was probably more a gung-ho on this than I was at first, I would say. And anyways, Kevin was I was instrumental with Kevin.
Well, just tell me who got that box. How do you know they set fire to it?
Well, we got an investigation. Kevin got a group of attorneys to do an independent investigation. You remember what their name was?
I can't recall it, but they were a big firm. They're all across the United States. The one that we worked with was based out of Houston. And Bobby, that's who found that box of evidence had been destroyed. And then later on, General Drummond asked for his own independent investigation, and they followed that up with some other.
They agreed. He needed another trial.
You remember right. Rex Duncan, Bob? He served in there for a while as representative.
Who was it?
Rex Duncan.
Yeah.
Rex.
He wasn't with me. But he was before my time.
Yeah, he was.
I know who he is.
But Rex was a former DA, and that's who Drummond hired to investigate, because he said, well, y'all didn't do an independent. Those people were working for you. And I said, AG, it's an independent investigation. That's what it means, independent. He goes, no, we're going to get our own independent. But here's the deal, Bob. This group out of Houston, and I can't believe I forgot the attorney's name. She's a little spitfire, the one I work with all the time. In fact, she's actually filed a Open Records Act on one of the DAs there on my behalf and Kevin's behalf, because we couldn't get records on some things. But anyways, they actually got an affidavit from the investigator, if I remember correctly. Now, we've had a lot of stuff going on, but if I remember correctly, he actually signed an affidavit saying all this happened. And then we received a letter. So they find this letter. So now you got to understand, Justin Sneed is the guy who executed Van Treese, which is the
Barry Van Treese in the hotel. Yeah, Justin Sneed, 19 years old at the time.
And so what they did, they offered Sneed a deal if he would give up Glossip, Richard Glossip. Now, if you go back and look at the interviewing, guess what? Sneed doesn't say, yeah, Richard Glossip is the guy that did this. Because when you're investigating somebody, you don't tell them what you want to hear. You ask them. So if I'm investigating Justin Jackson, I don't go in there and say, Justin, Bobby put you up to that, didn't he? Justin, Bobby's the one who did that. Justin, if you can tell me Bobby did that, I can save your life. I can help you out if you'll tell me Bobby did.
That's what they did on David Fleener, and they did the same thing on Glossip.
Same thing.
Covered, yeah.
But the way they should do it, the way you're supposed to do it, is you go in and say, Justin, did anybody put you up to this? We think that somebody put you up to this. Who would that be? And then you let Justin tell you, oh, that'd be Bobby Cleveland. Okay, now if he gives up Bobby Cleveland, then I'll say, hey, we probably work a deal if you can give us evidence. But here's the thing. I'm not going to depend on the guy who killed. If my whole case is built on the guy who killed the person, that ain't a good case. You know what? Any good criminal defense person can punch holes in that all day long. So what you've got to have is evidence to go along with that. So, yeah, I'll take your testimony, but your testimony better have some evidence that I can go back it up. Now, Justin, you know a whole lot better than I do. Have you seen any evidence going along with this that would change your mind or make you think, okay, maybe he was involved?
No, that was the separated you and I. When I came to you, I was saying, Justin, I'm confident we have an innocent man on death row. After, my time with Don and the things that he had told me, that and then to learn on those, what you were saying about them basically spoon feeding the murderer, Justin Sneed, this testimony, because I remember, I think it was Detective Bemo. It was Bemo and Cook. Those were the two detectives that were interrogating Sneed and Glossip. They said, son, you're facing the needle, but we can help you if you help us. And so they basically, because he went in there admitting that he killed Barry Van Treese, he said he didn't mean to, but Barry fought back, and it happened. And then he fled. He went back to Texas, but they caught him about a week later. And when they brought him in,
now who's he? Who's he?
He is Justin Sneed. Justin Sneed, the murderer, and at the time he was 19 years old. And so you see that, and that's what I saw in the documentary Killing Richard Glossip, and that was one of the first huge red flags that popped up. And then to find out, Bobby, that the jurors never saw those tapes. They never entered that into their case. And so
I'll just give you a second. Did he have a court-appointed attorney, or did he have his own attorney?
He had his own attorney. I think if I remember right, he paid him $2,000, and that gentleman, he did as about a poorly of a job as, and he has admitted that. He admits that.
Now, that was his first murder trial, wasn't it?
That's right. First capital murder trial. And he just didn't know what he was doing. And he has admitted on that documentary that he was not prepared for that, and gave very.
He actually for a while wrestled with taking his own life or something. If I remember correctly, this guy felt so bad about him getting convicted that he had let him down so bad that he actually had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
What point in time did you figure out that he did it?
That Sneed did it?
Not Glossip. I mean, when did you come to this conclusion?
Well, Sneed admitted it from get-go that he did it. That's what's bad, Bob. They've always known Sneed has always been the person who killed the victim. There's never been a question on that. The question was he put up to it by Richard Glossip? And the only thing that they have that makes any kind of sense or has any kind of, case is the fact that they have Sneed's testimony. So the only case they have is the guy who admittedly killed him, who gets saved if he points finger at Richard. And they don't have, in my opinion, now it's just, unless they got some rabbit in their hat I don't know about. But now, can I get a witness, Justin? Would you not say we probably looked at I mean, if there's some people involved in this case, I'm going to say you. I wouldn't hold myself up to be with Don. Probably wouldn't hold myself up to be with you. Kevin might know a little bit, but now 4 or 5 people that know this case, Mary would know it. But you know what I'm saying? I've looked at this case, and to me, I don't see anything. I don't think they could convict him of jaywalking if they retry.
No, and that's the other thing, Justin, is that Richard did not have a criminal history. He had not been in trouble with the law. And there we had somebody, he just thought if he told the truth, everything would be okay. And
now he was robbing the motel. I've heard of $40,000. Is that correct?
No, he was Justin Sneed was lying in wait in room 102. We've all seen the evidence, and we all being Humphrey and myself and the team, that there was another person involved, a woman, and she lured Barry Van Treese back into 102. He actually had another motel that was very similar in Tulsa. He had already been to the Best Budget Inn, the one that he owned in Oklahoma City that Glossip was the manager of, and collected the money, given out the paychecks, and then he went up to Tulsa, and then he came back and he told the manager at the Tulsa motel, if my wife calls, tell her I'm going to be late. He lived in Lawton. And so he made another stop back at the Best Budget Inn motel, and that was to see a girl that was a girlfriend of Sneed's. They were both into methamphetamines, and she lured him into the motel room, and then that's when he attacked Barry with a baseball bat. Another thing, Justin, if you remember, in the autopsy, there was knife marks where Barry had been stabbed.
Superficial. He wasn't stabbed. Those knife marks did not result in his death. They were superficial, very, very shallow knife marks. The knife had been broken, so it had a distinct, if I remember right, now I'm just going off my memory, but it had been broken and it had a very distinct stab pattern. And so he had 8 stab wounds that were superficial with distinctive patterns.
Now, Justin, right. What got you in the case to start with? Go back up.
Hold on, let him tell this. And then,
okay.
I was just going to say, on the second trial, they brought that up, and the prosecutor, and we had this in some of the independent investigation that we found, that she coerced Sneed into changing his testimony that he stabbed Barry, because he never said that in the beginning, if you remember that, Justin.
Yeah. They actually, here's what's funny. We came across a letter written from the prosecution, the DA's, written to Sneed, the witness, and his attorney, and it said that your testimony doesn't line up with the medical examiners. It would help our case if you would change your testimony. And then over here in the column told them what they wanted him to say, because again, he was saying, I didn't stab him. Somebody had to stab him. And that's where we say there was another person in the room, but he had always held, I never stabbed him. And then he came back and changed his testimony, which again was already sworn. He'd already sworn testimony. That right there should be a mistrial. When he changed that, because that's called perjury. And then to catch this letter is called supporting perjury. They knew it was perjury and had him do it. And it's also called witness tampering. All of those are felonies. Felonies committed, obstruction when they destroyed evidence, perjury, having him commit perjury, supporting perjury, and witness tampering. 4 felonies right there committed by the district attorney or those following their advice. And again, you know, when you got to do that, but yeah.
On that, JJ, what happened to the paperwork that he sent? Did that get into trial?
We got it so that we got.
Did they mention it in the trial?
Well, in the trial, what happened, his defense attorney was not a great defense attorney, but he did jump up. He did what was right there. He jumped up and said, hey, that should be a mistrial right there. Now, the district attorney, what you remember her name, Richard?
Bob.
Who was the guy who recused off of the pro board? Smotherman.
Oh, so, Smotherman.
Yeah, Connie Smotherman.
Smotherman, who was, and she's actually a law professor at OCU and OU now.
Yes. So Connie jumps up. If I remember, it was either Connie or Fern, but I think it's Connie on this one. Their attorney said that should be a mistrial, and the district attorney, assistant DA, which I think was Connie Smotherman, jumped up and said, well, no, this is, we're hearing it for the first time also, so it shouldn't be a mistrial because we're all hearing this for the first time. Well, we know now that was a big fat lie because it wasn't the first time, because they're the ones who told him what to say. So they perjured yourself right there again by claiming that's the first time they heard it. They're the ones who gave it to him and told him what to say. So again, yes, all of that come out, and that's why we were calling for a mistrial and saying that they should kick this out because he didn't get a fair trial and bring it back and rescind him back and start a trial all over. Hey, Justin, Bob Ashkin, I cut him off a while ago. I feel really terrible about that, Bob. I do want you to know. I probably won't sleep tonight knowing I did that. Hey, Justin, how did Bob had a great question there. How did you get involved in this thing?
It started with the documentary Killing Richard Glossip. It aired originally on the ID channel in 2017, which Joe Bollinger did the documentary. And so after his failed execution date of September 30th, they did that documentary, and that's where I saw Don Knight and got to know the case. And it bothered me because just like Humphrey, Bobby, I was convinced if you were on death row, you had been through the process. You were guilty.
Right.
But seeing that, and it was a 4-week long, it would be an hour each week and so I was just captivated by that documentary, and it bothered me, and it would bother me whenever I would drive by the prison, because to where I live to get to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, I'm usually driving by the prison to get on the Indian Nation Turnpike. And I can distinctly remember I would Google his name and I would just get butterflies in my stomach, sweaty palms, hoping. I didn't know about the moratorium then, that things had been shut down. And I would just be like, I pray that they haven't killed this man yet. And so fast forward to 2018, when Kevin Stitt ran for governor. I got involved in his campaign, was very helpful to him here in Southeast Oklahoma. And not long after he won, we got together, and he was down on my place, matter of fact, where I'm calling you from, and went deer hunting with he and his son. And while we were sitting in a tower blind that morning, I said, look, I'm going to send you a little summarization of a case that I want you to look into. And it's about a man that's on death row. He's in there on a murder for hire conviction. but it's going to come across your desk eventually, and please look into it. And so in January, the inauguration for Kevin Stitt came, and I'd gone to the ball. And a few days later, I woke up, and I just felt this tug, this get involved. And Justin can tell you, because he knows my story. My mother was dying of cancer. My house had been flooded. And so the downstairs of my house was a wreck. I had my mother living with me. I was going back and forth to MD Anderson with her. My plate overrunneth with responsibilities. I didn't have a second to spare, but I couldn't deny that tug that was from God to get involved. And so I immediately found Don Knight's phone number to his law. And when I called, his paralegal, Mary, answered the phone.
Who's Don Knight now?
Don Knight is the attorney that's been doing this ever since 2015, I believe, or 2014.
Pro bono.
Pro bono.
Is he Oklahoma City or where?
No, he's outside of he's in Littleton, outside of Denver, Colorado.
Okay, no, that's the guy that I met. Okay.
Don has put his heart and soul into this. But when I told Mary, I said, look, I'm somebody, I believe in capital punishment, but I believe we've gotten this wrong. And I said, I know you all had a hard time politically on opening any doors. And I said, I am connected. We've got a new governor. We've got a new regime at the Capitol, and I'd be glad to try and help. And so I got Don on the phone. We talked a little bit, and I said, hey, in 2 weeks, we've got Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell has his inauguration quail hunt. How would you like to come down and quail hunt with me? And we can do some networking. And he said, I love to quail hunt. And that's how the campaign was started from my end, to reach out to my Republican friends and tell them more about this case. And it was Kevin McDougal who I called first. And, you know, he was a lot like Humphrey. I mean, we all know Kevin, former Marine drill instructor, and pretty hardcore. But he turned around and he watched that documentary first, and he said, Justin, I think you're onto something here. And so that's where it started. And then Humphrey was soon after that. And I'll tell you what, they made the dynamic duo up at the Capitol. And there's been several people that has been very instrumental in getting us to where we are now. But I know it started with Humphrey and McDougal as legislators, and certainly going outside of our conservative circle and against the grain, because we were chastised a lot. You know, I myself was labeled soft on crime. I ran in 2020, but I never backed down. I said, you know, it's not about being a Republican or a Democrat. It's about doing the right thing. And I take great pride in Oklahoma that we try to do the right thing, but we certainly got this case wrong. And so I'm so thankful for those that had the courage to stand up for what's right. But I want to circle back real quick to that feeling that I would get, Bobby, when I would drive by the prison. I'd never been to the prison. Never.
You know what? When you say you want to circle back, you know who that sounds like? That sounds like Biden's first girl who get on there and talk. When they come, remember when she kept saying, we'll circle back on that one. We'll circle back on that one.
Well, I don't want to be associated with that administration. So let's walk it back and this is going to lead into what I was going to tell you. There was a movie in the early 90s before this murder had taken place with Justin Sneed and Barry Van Treese. It was called Dead Man Walking. I saw that movie in the theaters, and Sister Helen Prejean, it was from a book that she had written about her experience of being a spiritual advisor to a man on death row down in Louisiana. and Susan Sarandon played her part. Sean Penn played the death row inmates part. And at that part in the movie, and if you all have seen it, the guards, whenever they were leading someone to their execution, they would always yell, "Dead man walking." And when they did that, that feeling that I had in my stomach and the sweaty palms and just that nervousness of they framed that so well that I was feeling like that convicted man that was being led to his death. And guys, from a faith standpoint, I believe now that God was teeing me up for 30 years later, because that feeling that I had after seeing that documentary and trying to find out what had happened to him, I was driving by the prison. That was the same feeling that I had in the early 90s. So I can't deny that. And I've told Sister.
Well, it sounds that way that's the thing that crossed my mind. You know,
Yes,
when it's an accident, God played a part in getting you to get involved in this.
Absolutely. And all of us, there is so much to this story, all of the different people and the pieces that came together at the right time. And Justin will tell you, Humphrey will tell you, we had a lot of peaks and valleys.
Oh yeah, at the time you think, boy, we caught a break. You know, when we got that information that they destroyed 10 key pieces of evidence, that's when I got fired up, because hey, these are the prosecutors that are criminally breaking the law to get a guy executed, and you know the 10 key pieces of evidence are going to be 10 key pieces of evidence that get him off. That's why they destroy it.
Right.
And for them to do that is criminal. They should trade places with him. But
did you ever, either one of you ever ask Drummond, why does he think he did it? Why does he think he's guilty?
No, I sat down. One of the funniest things, I don't remember if you were there, but we got we went through Susan Arnell, and she got us a meeting with Drummond. And so we set that up, and Don Knight calls me and he says, JJ, he said, I want you to present to the AG this case. And I said, Don, now, why would a bunch of lawyers, because they had him and they had these people from this Houston law firm, I said, why would a bunch of lawyers want a hillbilly like me to present that case to the AG? Yeah, I've laughed about this because Don told me, he said, well, Jay, you have a way of saying stuff and just telling people that's the way it is. And if you don't like it, you kiss my ass. I said, I do have that gift, Don. I've got a gift like it. I said, hey, I'll be happy to present it. And so the AG actually called me over to his office about 3 days after that and said, hey, we don't feel like this was an independent because y'all put them up to it. I said, well, we didn't pay them. We didn't tell them what to do. It was independent. He goes, I'm going to hire my own. And I was like, well, you know what? If I was where you at, I'd hire and get satisfied myself that I'm getting the right information. I think you're smart for that. And so we never discussed, did he think he was innocent or not? He's now come out and said that he knows he didn't get a fair trial and he should be given a fair trial, but he thinks that he's guilty. I would like to see, because again, we started this by saying, I've looked at this case. I'm a decent investigator.
Well, you want to know why he would think that he's guilty, but I have to give him certainly a really good AAA report on this, because he went to a DA, ex-DA, to investigate a DA, and he found out there were some problems. So,
I'll give him all. Me and him don't agree on a whole lot, but you got to give him credit on this one. I'll give him kudos all day long. And
I give kudos to the governor and to the assistant DA, but to, what was his name again?
A.G. Drummond. I give A.G. Drummond.
No, not Drummond, the investigator.
Rex
Duncan. But I give Rex Duncan, big time for his investigation to go, and that's going against the DA.
Hey, Rex not only found stuff that we turned into him, Rex actually brought forth some stuff they'd withheld. And we've been saying they've been withheld, holding it, but Rex found it, brought it out, and also give us 2 or 3 other key pieces of information. So Rex didn't just find what we gave him, but he went out and found some more that actually strengthened the case. But now here's what's unbelievable is that you can have an AG agree with us. You can have the now district attorney, Vicky Bohannon, and the AG agree with us, take it to the appellate court in Oklahoma, and guess what they do? Unanimously, not even one dissent, unanimously decide to execute him, go to the pro board, again, get a bad call from the pro board, and then the governor goes ahead and is going to allow the execution. As far as we know, we actually got to stay before we find out exactly what the governor, but I'd hate to put his life, I'd hate to put Richard Glossip's life in the governor's hands. I can tell you that right now.
Well, we got
we
got those 2 stays during his reelection year in 22, and both you and McDougal were out stumping, and myself stumping for him very hard. And
which
so
is true. I'll give him credit for that.
That's why we got those 2 stays, and I'm grateful for it.
I'll give him credit for that. You're right. Forgot about that, Governor. Yep. My bad. Kudos to you. You saved his life.
He did though say, because I've still got the front page of the Tulsa World after the Pardon and Parole Board, Bobby, I want to touch base on that because you couldn't have scripted this any different as far as the dramatics of it. If you remember, Humphrey, that day it was storming, it was lightning. I mean, it was thundering, and that place was packed. But on one side of it, it was packed with DAs, both present and former, and they were there to see the 2. I know his name was Miller, a former judge, and then that the woman's name. I think they're both off of the board now, but to see that they voted no, even though you had the attorney general that gave us his time, which was 45 minutes, and then the defense to plead in front of, and while Drummond got up and testified that this man needs clemency, they still voted no, and it was because of the pressure of the district attorney's council, and they were there in full force. We tried
to get correspondence between some of these district attorneys and the pro board, which we know is there. And again, they were like, well, we were there on our own behalf. Well, then why'd you charge mileage back to the state if you were there on your own behalf? Why were you getting paid that day? You didn't take off sick. You were there in the behalf of the state, and we had to sue them. We won. We still got an ongoing trial with that. So that's up there in the appellate court. Really, we're fighting over who pays what right now. But anyways, that's what I want to point out. And then to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court, there has never in my lifetime been a conservative court anywhere close to as a conservative court as what we have right now in Washington, D.C. And for this conservative court to turn around and agree that our district attorneys destroyed evidence, witness tampered, perjured, withheld evidence, all of this illegal stuff that they said that warranted a new trial. Man, Oklahoma, we need to listen. This is not a time to crow. This is a time to say, hey, y'all need to listen.
Something's wrong. Something is bad. Let me just make this statement, JJ, to both the Justins there. This reminds me of the case that we have now on David Fleener, where they didn't bring in that they hid evidence. They wouldn't allow him his Second Amendment rights, which that happened to another person after David's trial, and they ended up. I think the judge ended up having to resign, but they refused. I mean, he told him he had to give up his Second Amendment rights, basically, on his trial. And they found there was hidden evidence. There's no autopsy. They didn't do an autopsy. There's the medical examiner, just as both of you know, medical examiners are supposed to keep that evidence forever in a murder. There was no evidence of anything. This guy got life without parole. He's been in there now 30 years. He admits he killed a guy. The guy broke into his home. They got into a fight. He knifed him twice. And the guy died from the knife wound. But he died across the street. When the medical examiner, she even testified wrong. And that's what took him down, because they polled the jurors afterwards. How did you guys do? What made you vote guilty? And they said, well, what the medical examiner said, that if he would have stabbed him twice, as he says, he would have died instantly or been paralyzed. Been disputed on that, but the top medical examiners in the nation have excluded that. And one doctor here in Oklahoma City, who's a very famous doctor, he looked at it. He said, no way, this guy could walk a mile, because he's filling up with, his lungs are filling up with blood every time he breathes. But he could still walk across the street. He could still walk a few blocks. He wouldn't have died. Well, after the trial, David, who's in the county jail waiting for sentence, wrote a letter to the medical examiner and asked her, why did she say that? Because that's not true. He stabbed them both in the house. And guess what she said? Well, she said it wrong. That wasn't what she meant to say.
Misspoke.
Well, that's the same thing with Glossops, if you remember.
Humphrey. I like it. There's a lot of things like that.
Y'all want to hear something funny? Guess who the medical examiner is in both these cases?
Same one?
Same person, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the same people in the, and again, Justin, you're going to remember this, Philip Hancock, who was executed, who they withheld evidence forever, finally came out. The only time that evidence came out, I think, was at the parole board.
That's right.
And again, here you have the person who dies' girlfriend saying, hey, they meant to kill him. They were going to kill him. They were beating him with the pipe. They're trying to stuff him in a cage. They're going to kill him. He managed to get hold of the gun and kill them.
Got self-defense. The gun fell out of the gentleman's waistband into his hands while they were beating him with a breakover. Right. I saw the concaved area in his forehead where they had been beating him and trying to get him to go into that cage.
Right. That total self-defense. And the girlfriend said so. The girlfriend, not that, the victim's girlfriend on tape said all day long it was self-defense. They hid that tape for the entire time and executed that guy, knowing it was a self-defense case.
Same thing in Fleener's case. Same, identical.
Oh, absolutely.
Identical.
Yeah.
And here's the deal on David Fleener's. Like I say, she testified, and now we have medical person after medical person. But they also set on some crucial evidence of his girlfriend knew the victim. Was all kinds of stuff going on there. I don't want to get too deep in it because we're working on that case. But a lot of information that would have been critical, and he probably would have never, ever even set foot in a jail or prison had they done what by law they're supposed to. These people took an oath to justice, not to hide evidence, not to try to get a notch on their gun, not to commit crimes to convict. They've got themselves convinced it's okay for them to commit crimes. They're committing crimes for the greater good. It's not for them to decide if it's right or not right. It's for them to let the jury.
Well, see, he said, well, I guess what they believe, it's okay to lie if we get a guilty conviction.
Yeah, and that's a problem when you've got these over anxious DAs just to get a conviction, and a lot of these guys are low hanging fruit. We've got to make that change. And
well, we got some good DAs. There's no question about it. We got some good DAs, but we got some bad DAs.
There's no doubt. and that's what I'm saying though. You just can't, if you've got some little bits and pieces here, you just can't say, hey, that's it. That person must be guilty. We've got to turn over every stone. And I'll to tell you too, I've learned, Humphrey, on Connie Smotherman. She's a law professor there at OCU and OU. And there's a petition now, ever since that decision came out, a petition for her to resign from the students, from the law students. So the decision that was handed down from the U.S. Supreme Court is having some effect in our state immediately.
Well, it should. It should. It's about time. They should actually look at filing criminal charges on all those that were involved in that. And again, we'll have to come back on a later date and talk about the DAs committing frauds. And I'd like to have somebody on here to talk about, they used to have a check writing scheme so that they would, if you wrote a bad check, they would get you in there and recover that check. But the person who got the bad check, the business owner, would seldom get paid. But the DAs would have you, if you wrote a $10 check, it might cost you $2,000 to get out of that, paying them $2,000. But then you'd turn around and the person who got the bad check would never get their money. Now they've got this probation scheme going on that's been going on for years. So again, it's time that we look at our district attorneys and that we start holding them accountable. But now, Bob, you know this, that DA's bunch has got a stronghold. I mean, they got their foot on the neck of the legislators up there.
DA association, that whatever it's called.
DAC.
Attorney's Council.
Yeah, the Attorney's Council. They're out there present in the House, and people think whatever if they said it, it's the truth. That's it. Right. They said it. But let me ask you this question, because I know we're short on time, but it sounds like to me.
It's okay.
JJ, don't interrupt me, JJ. Don't do that. It sounds like to me, and I'm asking both of you guys this question, that when they retried it, they didn't look for new evidence. They just used the very same thing they already had and went with that. Would that be a fair statement? Well, you're talking about 3 trials.
Here's the deal, Bob. That's all they've got. They don't have anything else. Their main case is going to be built around their witness. And this is what Justin, you jump in if you think I'm wrong, but how in the world will they go back and have a trial? Because if I'm the attorney and you're having a trial, I'm going to go, can you look at this piece of paper right here? Does that look familiar? Is that the letter that the former prosecution wrote to ask you to change your sworn testimony, and that you knew that you went on and told a lie because the DAs told you to, because they can take your life? So is it not true that you'll say whatever to save your life? You'll say whatever they tell you to. Is that not true? Well, guess what? You just ruined their whole case. Plus, you just got it on the record that these suckers are a bunch of lying, cheating, felony. And when you get that on the record, I think we can really go after it to say, guess what? Right there it is. We need to prosecute. So again, tell me, Justin, wouldn't you agree? If they go to trial, they're going to talk about where's the evidence, and was the evidence that would have cleared Richard. Now I'm going to find some way to get that in. And again, you know what I mean?
It would have either concreted their case, or it would have set him free, because those were items that Sneed testified to that Richard had touched, like the duct tape, like Barry's wallet, the shower curtain, that when he said he helped him, was covering up. He said all of that on trial. But that was the case. I think it was box number 5, if my memory serves me correctly, that was destroyed, that had all those pieces of evidence.
Now they ain't going to destroy that for, you know what I'm saying?
How are they going to have another trial? How are they going to have another trial?
Exactly. And another thing, Bobby, that they withheld is that Sneed had been given lithium, and that he's schizophrenic and he's bipolar, and they didn't bring up any of that. And as a matter of fact,
that's what they withheld. That stuff that they withheld on that
was
and that's still there. Now we do have that now.
Tylenol.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you both. What do they have today to put him on trial for? Do they have evidence?
That's what I said, Bob. I've never come and said that he's innocent. You never heard me say that.
Yeah, just asking the question. The question is,
well, Bob, let me answer. I have said that they don't have enough to convict him of jaywalking. I've said that right here. They don't have. I'm not saying he's innocent, but if they got something to show he's guilty, they damn sure never showed it. I don't know it. You ever seen it, Jackson? You ever seen any evidence? So if they've got something, we haven't seen it. And I just don't think they could convict him.
So in that case, I'm just asking the question here real quick. The DA, after last year, they put in a law that the DA, is there any case that was, they didn't get all the evidence, they didn't held back evidence, that she could prove it, that they can let him go. That they have the right to do that, to investigate.
We actually looked at that. We were actually looking, if the Supreme Court had not ruled the way they were looking at, we had actually talked about trying to invoke that and get that done, because yes, this case would fall under that with all the new evidence that is shown. And the evidence, much of the evidence is that DAs committed crimes, lied, and destroyed evidence. So it's not the new evidence. The new evidence is what the DAs did to destruct and destroy evidence.
See, I didn't. You guys really fill me in on a lot. I'm sure you did other people, because I didn't know all of this.
To Sneed's testimony, again, back Glossip, he has never wavered on his innocence. But Sneed, he has changed his story multiple times, and it's been documented on the documentary Killing Richard Glossip. You see him wavering, and that he really did. He just didn't want to hurt the family with the truth. You remember him saying that, Humphrey?
Yeah, he's changed his tune several. I think even in writing, there's been some things. But again, the bottom line, he is their number one. He is their case. Justin Sneed is their case. So they are going to have to build their case on a guy who's already proven perjury, on a guy that has shown that he will lie and say whatever they said. The tapes of them interviewing him never got brought in, and if they bring in them tapes, you're going to see he never mentions the name. They're the ones who told him the name. I don't, like I say, I think the AG and anybody who wants to bring this case ain't thinking real good, in my opinion.
They're going to have a bad look, and they're not in it to lose. I know Detective Cook, I believe he's been gone now for quite some time, but Detective Bemo, he's still alive. And here's what he said that was very interesting, guys, in that documentary. I about fell out of my chair when I heard him say this. And this came from the guy that basically put the nail in Glossip's coffin on a conviction. He said, well, I really don't think it was anything that was a mastermind robbery. It was just a botched robbery. And that's what that there wasn't this big plan to kill Barry that Glossip had put together, that he was the architect of. It was exactly what Bemo said. I think it was just a botched burglary and a botched robbery, and that came straight out of the detective's mouth.
And one other thing that I think everybody needs to understand. They're saying that Glossip robbed Van Treese, and what they need to know is Glossip had just given all the money to Van Treese. If you don't have to kill him, you don't have to rob him. You had the money. If you were going to take the money and run, baby. I mean, go.
He was embezzling money, Bobby. That's what they tried to show with the accounting, and that Barry was going to come back to fire him. Barry had just given him a bonus. he had just given him a bonus because he was doing so good with that motel. And
the math they used to show that he was trying to embezzle, it's DOC fuzzy math. Somebody had gotten their math from DOC, because they go back and say, well, look how many rooms this has, and then he would have had this much. Well, that's assuming that every room was rented out every night of the week, which is it's stupidity, we know. And so again, their math is flawed.
Who did the books, Bobby, was Barry Van Treese's wife. She did the accounting. She did the spreadsheet, and it was all calculated on projected earnings. And that's what they were trying to show, that they were about 2,000 in the hole. But when Don Knight got a hold of it, they put a forensic accountant on that, and that was all debunked. But that was the two things. They tried to use embezzlement, and then Justin Sneed's testimony that it was a murder for hire, because he then came up and said, well, I'm going to get rid of Barry and I'm going to take over. I'm going to be managing the Best Budget Inn. Then he thought he would own the Best Budget Inn. That was the story that Sneed tried to tell.
Well, I appreciate you two guys for hanging on, and even though you got a lot of criticism, and you probably still get criticism, but you had a lot of criticism. And you stood up and fight for the right thing, and there's just not many people out there, as we all know, that will do that.
Well, again, back to my earlier story, I give all the credit to God and Justin and Kevin McDougal and I and Don Knight. We were all just the conduit to that, and because truly to know what and to what Rich has been through, it's unbelievable. And he has told me personally, he felt like God put him in that position to bring awareness to those that have been wrongfully convicted. That's how he
got it. It was with all of y'all. Just happened to be in there. JJ, how much time we got?
We need to close her down. I want to tell y'all, join me on jj4ok.com, jj4ok.com. You can always go there on what we're doing. OCP, we also do a live Facebook on Fridays. You can get that there. You can go and look at other stuff I'm working on. We're going to have a lawsuit here pretty quickly against the house. Y'all need to stay tuned. Last thing I want to say, one of the biggest privileges is that sister that he was talking about on The Innocent Man. We actually got to beat her out of this and have become good friends. And she is a hoot. Y'all need to check her out. She's fun. We need to have her on here sometime.
She loves rednecks from Oklahoma.
She does.
She love JJ then.
She does.
She does. I love her. She's a lot of fun.
He's the biggest redneck we got. I mean, I don't know anybody bigger redneck than JJ.
Here's what she told me, Humphrey, on Tuesday. She goes, when you get a nun from South Louisiana and some rednecks from Oklahoma, there's nothing that we can't do. And I
absolutely. Hey, we're going to have to get off here. We appreciate everybody. This is a big win, but it's not where we stop. This just tells me that we need to roll up our sleeves. We need to do a lot of work in Oklahoma on our criminal justice system, holding these DAs accountable and making them do what's right. We need to go after these who falsely committed crimes and did all that. We need to pursue them, prosecute them, and then we need to make sure this man gets out. We need to work on this David Fleener case, and again, look at all the other cases that need that kind of attention. Hey, y'all have a blessed day. Appreciate both of you guys.